The tropical forests of the world are under threat. The small farmers burn them away to make room for crops. The big industrial giants rip them up for the minerals that lie beneath. Faced with the destruction of 8 square miles every minute, individuals and groups are sounding the alarm.
Perhaps my most important role is to shout long and loud and persuade people not to destroy the vegetation which we have in different parts of the world.
Plants are becoming extinct before they're known to science. And who knows what valuable products for mankind are being lost this way. Because, as the slogan says, extinction is forever.
There are many hundreds of thousands of plants on Earth. And most of them have not really been looked at seriously by chemists. And even less have been looked at by pharmacologists to see what sort of active compounds there are in them.
The oil and coal on which the chemical industry is based is not infinite, and that when this runs out, then we will be back in looking to the plants as our primary source of these sort of compounds.
Most people know that morphine and codeine come from the poppy, that quinine comes from cinchona bark, and maybe even that the willow was the first source of another everyday medicine.
Willow bark contains salicin, and salicin you can consider as the forerunner of aspirin.
As well as these, there are hundreds of less well-known plant medicines and thousands of chemicals not yet identified in the plants that we're destroying as we clear the forests.
Sweet Jamaica, she's on the move. Help me with my song and let the people go.
Kingston, capital of Jamaica. Europe is only slowly coming back to the plant as a source of medicine, but the West Indies has never thought otherwise. Some of their bush medicine was already here when the slave ships arrived from Africa, bringing a lot more folk wisdom with them. Since then, the knowledge of the medicinal powers of plants has been handed down from generation to generation, often through the oral tradition of folk song. How's this, for instance, for a singing seed catalogue?
Man piaba, tam call back and lemongrass, mini root, gully root, granny backbone. Dead man get up, punchy panturu, coolie bitters, corella bush, and the old compel and sweet. Sweet broom cow tongue and granny crotch duppy. Guzung and the guzung weed. I have all time.
Louise Bennett lives in the hills above Kingston. She's a poet, an entertainer, and an expert on bush, and sometimes all three at once. She's already passed on her knowledge to her niece, Simone.
Hi, Simone, what do you have?
Have Live for Life, Single Bible.
Single Bible, yes. Rice bitter. Rice bitters is good.
That bitter ceracy, that's the
Cure nearly everything.
Yeah.
And, like, good for colds, it's good to wash out your, what you call about wash out your system?
Yes.
Like that to cleanse your blood, to, it is just a great
It's sort
thing.
of an all-round tonic.
Yes, that, if you drink bitter ceracy every morning, you're supposed to be just well, huh? And this is Single Bible for sore foot.
That's aloes, isn't it?
That's what you call it,
Bitter aloes, isn't it?
Yeah, Single Bible for sores and things, very good.
Well, how do you use it?
You peel that and you just put it on. This is also very good if you have ulcerated stomach. You cut this and you just slip, very bitter.
Oh, yes.
Very, very bitter. But you just slip the pieces down your throat.
And Dr. Lloyd Koch knows other uses.
It has been used to treat burns. It has been used in folk medicine to treat burns and also to prevent many skin ailments.
What about now? The pharmaceutical industry has latched onto it, have they?
Certainly. It's now a part of some suntan lotions. It's been used in medicine to treat X-ray burns, people exposed to excessive doses of X-rays.
You believe that works, do you?
But I know, I've seen it work.
Yeah.
Single Bible? Oh, yes, man.
But, I mean, the European doctors are very suspicious of this kind of thing.
That's their business.
Yeah, well, yeah.
If they don't want to accept it, that's their business. They're foolish.
But the truth is that there are plant fans on both sides of the Atlantic. At the University of the West Indies, Biochemist Dr. Koch has been researching the scientific basis for the beliefs in bush medicine that he grew up with.
There has been quite a lot of work on bush teas for their medical effects as well as for their effects in the social history, the social life of the communities.
I mean, obviously these people weren't fools. What they were doing with the plants, well, the way that they were using them was doing them so good. So how did it come about that very often their knowledge and their skills were discarded?
There were two reasons mainly. One is that the people who had the knowledge of the herbs were very often people who were practicing African or other non-European religions, which were frowned on by the authorities. And it was felt that a lot of this herbal knowledge was bound up with witchcraft, with use of poisons and various things to hurt one's enemies. So this was one reason. Another reason was simply certainly the cultural attitudes which came with the political system, which said that the culture which was not that of the ruling class was something savage and something to be discouraged. But nevertheless, on the other hand, one must say that the medical practitioners have always been interested in the use of herbs and have contributed a great deal to our understanding of these herbs from the modern scientific point of view.
Are there special rules about which part of the plant to pick and what to use it for?
Well, some of them.
What time of day?
Well, you see, there's a general rule about picking certain things at night. You know, don't. There are certain bush, especially if you want it for a cure, that you never pick at after 6 o'clock in the evenings. You know, and there are others again that you can pick at night.
There always seems to be associated with plant remedies a certain amount of, I think, what the Western world would regard as mumbo-jumbo, this business of collecting plants at a particular time of the year, perhaps gathering them by moonlight. Is there any more to it than that?
Well, certainly we know that there are seasonal changes in the levels of certain compounds in plants. We know that certain compounds change when plants are under drought conditions. We even know that there are levels of moonlight which are of a level sufficient to affect the growth and activity of plants. So this moonlight business and season of the year business is not just mumbo jumbo. It's the result of accumulated years of experience, which science is only now beginning to understand.
You can always know when a bush is good for, when it has medicinal properties. You know how you know?
Wait a minute.
When the goats eat it. Don't you know that?
Oh, I see.
Yeah, that's true.
Goats eat cigarette packets, though,
Oh, but your man, that is Bugu Yaga. I mean, a cigarette packet. Who wants to eat cigarette packet? But you watch them eating the plants.
Yes.
There are certain things that goats don't touch, you know. And there are certain plants that are poisonous at certain times. And at certain seasons of the year, the goats never touch it.
So, when you look at the use of bush,
Yes.
you have to look at it with a considerable degree of caution then. You
Certainly.
can't just take it at face value.
No, one cannot. There's a lot of trial and error. But let me say at the same time that the attitude of modern science has been to take the bush and to analyze it, take its chemical components apart, and to find the 1 or 2 or 3 active compounds in it.
Yeah.
The traditional practice has been usually to combine the use of one herb with that of another, which might be an antidote. And it may be, the folk wisdom may be such that many of these harmful side effects are avoided by the use of appropriate antidotes or by appropriate methods of preparation.
I feel everything has its place. And what I really feel is that the European people, I mean, the surgeons and the researchers and all that should go more into these plants for the things that we say that they are so good for.
Louise Bennett, though, has an unexpected ally in Kew Gardens. Cool and academic, it's worlds away from an uninhibited Jamaica, but for all that, it too is a committed storehouse of plant wisdom. They've been collecting plants here ever since the 1700s, but the business of importing greenery really became a growth industry, if you'll forgive the expression, when George III was on the throne and Sir Joseph Banks was the director here. In those days, more and more of the British schoolboy's atlas was being painted red until about Half the world, it seemed, was a kind of colonial greenhouse. Sounds like a bit more imperialistic exploitation, and of course sometimes it was. But there was always more to it than that, and come to that, the directors here have always been more than just green-fingered gardeners with gloves on. They organised expeditions to collect these plants from Africa, the East Indies, the West Indies, India itself. And these earlier questers brought back not just plants, but seeds too, and information about where they grew and what they were used for. So there's much more to Kew than meets the tourist's eye, and as the world's plant habitats are threatened, it's just as well. A sign of the times is that Professor Arthur Bell, Kew's new boss, is the first director who isn't a botanist, but a plant chemist, and he's desperate to get at all Kew's stored wisdom.
One of my ambitions here is to get all this material and put onto computer, so that if we want to know what plants have been used at any time for treating a particular disease or feeding animals in an arid region, then by pressing the appropriate buttons, we can immediately make available to ourselves and to other people all this stored information of the centuries. My one great worry is, while we're using up the Earth's fossil fuel resources, we're also destroying the plant kingdom. We're going to reach the point where we've used the oil and ultimately the coal resources, only to find we've destroyed them. In the meantime, there'll be nothing to go back to. And I think all government should be aware of this and recognize the importance of conserving not only plants which we know to be valuable at the present time, but conserving plants we haven't even looked at and which may, amongst them, have species of vital importance to the future of the human race.
Do you think that in that interim period a lot of precise knowledge about the use of folk medicine has been lost?
Well, there's a great deal of information stored away in various libraries and herbaria on the use of plants as for medicinal purposes. Now, it's certain that not all of these are genuine. On the other hand, a certain proportion must be folk remedies which have a grain or a part of that are scientifically true. The herbarium contains material. I think we've got between 5 and 6 million specimens in the herbarium, which have been collected over a period of 2 to 3 centuries.
I suppose what has to be asked for people...
The man entrusted with all this information is Peter Green, curator of the herbarium. But just what is a herbarium?
It's a collection of plant specimens for scientific study. I think that's the most succinct way in which I could define it.
Yeah. So if you've actually got something over 5 million plants, does that mean you've got just about every plant in the world here?
No, I'm afraid not. I think we have the most comprehensive collection, but there are species which have been described for which we have no representation. And then, of course, there are species which are still to be discovered, because some parts of the world still need to be explored botanically, and there are species yet to be described for science. We have the dried specimens, which are flat. They're mounted on sheets, and we put them into cupboards here, into folders. Here I've taken out a folder of Cisempelos from the Manus burmese, East Tropical African specimens in this particular folder. Collected by Magogo and Glover in 1968. Here is the Latin name, which is the point of reference, if you like. And the interesting thing is that here some of his their field notes. Juice from the roots is dropped into the ear as a remedy from earache. In this particular family, there are a lot of alkaloids. And in families where there are alkaloids, you often get medicinal uses, often folk uses. Here, this one, for instance, the same species, a strong medicine for diarrhea. Another genus within the same family, material from Sarawak in this case, roots yellow, supposed to be a good antidote for drunkenness. You chew the root and swallow the juice before drinking. So it means that a herbarium is a source of more than just botanical names.
What I should like to see Kew doing is acting as a great clearinghouse of information on the plant kingdom, and also acting as a sort of depository of living plants as well, either in the gardens themselves or in the seed bank, so that we at Kew see ourselves as trying to save some of this material, but at the rate it's being destroyed, we can only scratch at the surface.
The Royal Botanic Gardens grabbed another quick scientific lead in 1875 when it set up Britain's first plant chemistry laboratory. The idea then was to help decide to which group any particular plant belonged, because sometimes those that looked like close relatives could turn out to have quite a different chemical makeup and so belong to an entirely different family. But what was, and still is, used as a means of identification also shed an entirely new light on plants. You began to see them not just as decorations, not just as vegetables, not even just as potential sideboards, but as living chemical plants. So the work that Dr. Linda Fellows and her team at Jodrell Laboratories at Kew is doing is telling us just exactly what we need to know.
Plants do make lots of chemicals which are not found anywhere else. They're a different kind from normal life-supporting chemicals. And not only that, these unusual plant chemicals are not found universally in plants. They tend to accumulate in different groups. And the more closely related plants are, the more likely they are to have similar strange chemicals in them. We have some tropical beans here, 2 different kinds, both grow in Africa. First of all, what we do is we grind up a small amount of each one in a pestle and water, rather like this. Grind it up to a fine powder, just as much as we need for the preliminary extraction, which is usually quite a small amount.
Dr. Fellows puts the small amount of powdered bean into a phial and adds, first of all, a petrol-like liquid. 24 hours later, she'll use another solvent to remove a different group of compounds.
And remove this fatty layer.
In the end, there'll be 3 or 4 solutions, each containing particular plant extracts. A few drops from each extract are dotted along the bottom of a thin, absorbent plate and dried off. The plate is put into a narrow tank containing acetone. This soaks to the top of the plate, taking the bean extracts with it. The trick is that some are absorbed more slowly than others and travel further, so they're all spread out. Spray with dilute sulfuric acid, and those different chemical compounds from the ground-up bean show up as a whole collection of different colours. There's a lot of some, little of others. But what exactly are they? What could they do? If they do prove to have medicinal powers, it wouldn't be the first time. At the London School of Pharmacy, it's the job of pharmacognosists like Dr. David Phillipson to assess their usefulness.
You can look for particular types of chemicals. So we might call that the chemical approach. You could say, here's a plant which has got compounds in which have got interesting biological activities. Let's take the opium poppy. It's got morphine in, it's got codeine in. What about any of the other poppies? How many poppies are there? If we look, we'll find that there's about 100 poppies. Well, we say, well, have they all been looked at for their chemistry? Well, no, they haven't. And then when you start to look, as we've been doing, you find that they're very variable. So you can get 2 poppies, you take them to a botanist, and he says, yes, they're identical. And then you look at them chemically, and they're quite different. Now, that's one sort of approach. Another sort of approach in looking for new drugs is to say, what sort of activity are we looking for? Let's take an example. Let's say we're looking for an anti-cancer drug. And there's a lot of work been done in this area. We can say, right, let's get a simple test. We can take some cancer cells, we can put those cells in a flask, and then we can say, look, does our plant extract kill those cells? Does it harm them at all, or does it have no effect? If we imagine that we have an extract from a plant and it kills the cells, then we can start to divide up that extract into different fractions, and then we can test each fraction. Eventually, you hope to come to a pure chemical compound. This biological approach was used when they discovered the anti-cancer compounds from the periwinkle, Catharanthus. They used this approach, and we now have 2 compounds, vinblastine and vincristin, which were developed by the Lilly company. They are now in clinical use.
In Jamaica, the periwinkle grows all over the place, like here in Mrs. Preston's backyard. But it's hardly ever called the same thing twice, so I asked Louise Bennett what she called the periwinkle.
Periwinkle?
Yes, from the periwinkle.
Ramgoat roses.
What they call again?
Ramgoat roses.
Ramgoat roses,
Yes.
that's right. Yes.
You must not say ramgoat rose. Roses.
Roses. Given your knowledge of the kind of chemical compounds that existed in plants, the discovery that Catharanthus roseus was so useful didn't come as any enormous surprise to you.
Well, it happened almost by accident. There was a doctor in a country town, a Dr. Johnston, who noticed that his patients were using this periwinkle, as it's known. It's also known as ramgoat roses. And they were making a tea from it to treat diabetes. And he sent some of this bush to some colleagues in Canada. They ran some tests on diabetic rats, and to their horror, the rats died. And it turned out that these rats were unusually susceptible to infection. Further tests injecting extracts of this bush showed that these rats had very low counts of white blood cells. So immediately, research was entered into to find out what was causing the white blood cells to be destroyed. And a group of about 4 different compounds were found. The two most important were vincristine and vinblastine. And they are now used quite extensively to treat certain types of cancer, Hodgkin's disease, leukemia, things like this, because these compounds in this bush are very active against cancer cells.
All that from a simple, pretty plant. It makes you wonder how many more apparently modest flowers really have vital importance. This is the sort of thing that's happening all over the world as the search for raw materials, particularly minerals and fuels, becomes more and more desperate. In this case, it's bauxite that's being torn out of the hills of Jamaica. But in Africa and South America too, the mining engineers are ripping the hills apart with the same enthusiasm. Every 14 months, a forest the size of England is wiped out. And it's pretty ironic that as we're destroying more and more plant life in the name of progress, we're discovering that among those plants could be the answers to some of our worst diseases.
It isn't only the third world which is destroying our plant resources. This is being destroyed on a large scale all over the world, and governments must realize that this is a heritage, a world heritage, which is being destroyed.
There is quite a bit of environmental damage going on at the moment, but I think the more serious loss, is the loss of the knowledge of these plants, because you'll find that there are very few people who actually retain the knowledge of the use of these plants, are able to accurately define them and to define their use. And that kind of knowledge is being lost with the older generation.
There are between 250,000 to 500,000 species of plant. Many of them have not been looked at chemically. Very few of them have been investigated for biological activities. And many of them, we don't know exactly what the compounds are which are causing the activity, or whether the plants are reliable or not reliable.
If we've got 250,000 or more plants in the world, we haven't scratched the surface. And I honestly believe that there must be an untapped gold mine of useful chemicals which we've never got round to discovering yet. So we've got to do something now.
Helena start cry for your belly. Go home, Helena, go home, Helena. Go boil so rusty for you belly. Go boil so rusty for you belly. The mama she pick some so rusty. She boil it and give to Helena. Helena, she drink and she sleep and she sleep and she wake up without pain in her belly. And she wake up without pain in her belly. Look good pants so rusty, Helena. The vine and the leaf and the berry. Come no, so Rossi, for oh, so Rossi, that cure you bad pain a belly. That cure you bad pain a belly. Yes.